Hey folks, this is Don Schaefer with you. Excited to be on this YouTube program with you. Want to welcome all my YouTube friends and those that are with me today. We are talking about programming. We are talking about software upgrades. We've been going through a series realizing that we have been designed as hardware. God has created us that way, but we need software upgrades as we go along. And the problem a lot of times is we've been hacked. We've allowed a virus or something to get into our software and we struggle in life. But God doesn't want us to struggle. He wants us to be programmed in a good, godly way so that we can get all the promises that He's promised us, all the joys and happiness that He'd have for us. And that's where my thought for this week is the fact that I don't want to miss the point in life. I want, if there's a point for you and I being here, we do not want to miss that point. We want to be able to fulfill everything. So I'm hoping to give you some great ideas today of how to expand your life in an area. This is another software upgrade. I know last time we talked, we had a software upgrade called Getting Planted. We talked about the fact that things don't just happen by luck. There's a law for success. There's a law for happiness. There's a reason for all of that. And how we were designed to take on seeds. The words and thoughts that are planted, or sent our way rather, can get planted in our minds. And the Bible talks about different types of minds. We have to work on keeping our minds in a position to handle different ideas, to plant them, to allow them to grow in our life. And then we talked a little bit how Jesus mentioned, he says you can take a kernel, I like to use corn. You can take a kernel corn, a nice yellow kernel corn, it by itself can look nice. You can put it on a shelf and say, hey, that's a nice sharp looking yellow piece of corn. But for it to really show its glory and God's glory, it has to be planted. It has to die to itself, and then it produces cobs of corn, an innumerable amount of kernels of corn in one cob, and then you start taking each of those kernels and allowing them to be planted, it just blossoms. But our lives are meant to be the same thing. Our lives are meant to blossom. We are meant to be planted, and the only way we can really be a blessing is allowing our lives to be in that position. And I know there was a song years ago, but it was called, you can count the seeds in an apple, but only God can count the apples in a seed. And that's so true. I mean, you can take an apple and cut it up and open it up. You can count how many seeds are inside of it, but only God can count how many apples are going to come out of that one seed that is planted and an apple tree grows. It's season after season after season after season. So that was our upgrade last week. It was getting planted. We need to be planted. And that's where this week we're going to be talking about you're not listening. 2.16, another upgrade. You are not listening. And the scripture we're using is in Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, which goes like this. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, being not conformed to this world, but being transformed by a renewing of your mind, that you might be able to prove the good and perfect and acceptable will of God for you in your life. And so what Paul is talking about, and he's actually begging, he says we need to offer ourselves to the point where giving ourselves back to God and saying, hey, which is a reasonable service because He's created us in the beginning. We don't belong to ourselves, we belong to Him. We are on loan from God. But giving ourselves back to God and allowing Him to put His thoughts inside of us, not being conformed to this world. The world will program. TVs, they call it TV programming. They try to program your mind. A television, they're trying to tell their vision to you. God is wanting to be able to do the programming and give His vision for you. And only then are we going to be successful in life. And only when we realize this are we getting ourselves in a position for Him to do that. But I do have a quote here from Kate Murphy. It says, listening is something we do or don't do every day. Okay, listening is something we do or we don't do every day. This is You're Not Listening 2.16. God is wanting to do the supernatural in your life. And so many people struggle to listen. They have a hard time listening. We have a epidemic going on in the United States right now of not listening, of not being able to have people in your life that will really listen to you, or not being in a position to listen. They say that in the past 40 years that suicides have raised 65% in the United States. I also read something where in the fact that every day there's 2,000 people in the United States that are committing suicide, giving up on life. And I dare say much of that is because they have no one in their life to listen to them. We have so much social media, we have our TVs, we got our basements, we got our PlayStations and whatever young people do. We have so much stuff that we can entertain ourselves and not have to communicate. Well, we were designed by design to communicate and share thoughts and connect. And a lot of times what happens, that is not happening. So it's a very lonely life for many people. And a lot of times, people have a hard time really getting into a situation where they're close with anybody. Do I have anybody to listen to me? I live life and I'm struggling sometimes because nobody wants to listen to me. Whatever I have to say. People pay big money. In fact, as they say in Japan, they've got actors. They got actors to play roles. If you want a wife to greet you at the door, you can pay someone that will pretend to be your wife to greet you at the door. That will sit down and say, hi honey, how was your day? Or if you wanted a child, there's different actors, different people. They pay for this stuff. They're not real, they're just actors, but they fulfill a purpose because there's a need in each and every one of us to have somebody listening to us. And so many people don't have any idea of how to be a good listener. When is the last time you really spent the time listening? Most times what happens when you're with people, they're just trying to think of what they're going to say next. They're not really trying to listen to you. It's amazing. I find myself with people, talking to them, and as soon as I show them that I will listen to them, it's like instant bond, instant connection. It seems like this is a lost art, and it's a skill that many haven't developed. Being able to listen to other people and being able to allow them to express themselves. And that's where people, like I say, are hiring coaches, or they go to counselors, or they different psychiatrists or whatever. They pay people just to listen to them. And a lot of people make big money. A lot of people have been successful in life just by being able to listen. I look at Oprah. They say what makes her so successful is she is a very good listener. So she get these people on and she would just listen to what they had to say. And people love that show. And that's where in our life, a lot of times we ourselves are not good listeners. We have to learn to do that. So many times people say, I can't remember names. Well, a lot of times it's because you're not listening. You're not really taking an interest in the person. You could care less. That's the problem a lot of times is you could care less about what other people have to say. The only thing you care about is numero uno, and that's yourself and what you're going to have to say and what you want and everything about you in life. If somebody lets you talk about you, you're happy. But to be able to listen is a real skill, and it's a lost art in a lot of our society today. But listening is how we develop wisdom and form meaning in relationships. It's the building process. Without being able to listen, we deprive ourselves of wisdom. There is so much to be said. I know myself, I try to listen to everybody. Even the checkout girls at the checkout counters. I will talk to them. I'll ask them about their name and try to associate or try to figure out how they got named, but just trying to create some conversation and just showing them that I will listen to them. And a lot of times they just open up to this, and I've got a new best friend sometimes just by listening to them in some ways. So we need to develop this. A lot of times the answers that we need to hear in life, as far as what we need to do and how we need to do it, it takes a listening ear. It takes someone that is able to listen. And that's where people are drawn to good listeners. They're drawn to individuals that will listen to them. I remember growing up, my relatives, I can name my relatives that I just loved as a young child. because these are relatives that would sit down and listen to me. They'd ask me about what I was doing, ask me about school and all this, and I didn't know a whole lot about listening, but boy, it sure made me feel good to have somebody take a little interest in me. And that's where it's so important sometimes, because so much of life we could be missing because we don't know how to listen. However, this is going to take a little twist here. However, there is a message of life that few hear, and that is the call of God. Are we gotten ourselves into a place we can't even hear God? We cannot, we're all created with a purpose, and we need to have spiritual ears to be able to hear what God is wanting to say to us. And many times we can't hear that. And a lot of times in life we are miserable because we don't know why we're here. Why God? Why am I here? Because we haven't developed an ear, a spiritual ear to be able to hear. And it's interesting because I've ran into people in life, and this amazes me, because you can take people out in the ocean that fish, and they just sense things, they hear things, they know when stuff is going to happen. And I know I ran into a gentleman. His name was Larry from South Carolina, and he was in the Vietnam War. But when he was young, he said he lived in the woods. He and his friends, they played war games and what have you in the woods. And he said, I was always out there barefoot, 90 and humid, out in the woods. And he said when he went into the military, they went over to Vietnam. It was hot and humid. He says, I could live in that, because this was what I grew up with. I was used to this. He said there was many guys that I would carry their gear because they were wasted because of the heat. He said, I don't mind heat at all. But there was something that he developed in the wilds of South Carolina, and that was an ear to hear the call of the wild, to hear the animals, to hear the birds, to hear what was going on inside of the woods. And in Vietnam, he saved many lives. He saved many lives, but by being able to hear the call of the birds in the jungle, because the birds respond differently when there is someone as an enemy or whatever in the woods by them than when there is not. So they would have him listen to the birds so that they would know if there was any Viet Cong, ahead of them or in the woods in different areas. The animals were letting him know this. And when he would hear certain things, he would say, we don't need to go there because I feel the birds are seeing something over there by the way they are chirping and handling themselves. He knew how to hear the call of the wild, of the animals and birds around him, saving many lives in his company that he was working with. But this is a developed ear. This is a developed ear. And that's where for us, we need to be able to get ourselves in a place where we can hear what God is trying to say to us. Are we listening? I don't know. We need to be programmed in this. And you develop this sort of thing. And there's so many distractions right now. We in life, like I mentioned earlier about all the social medias and different things. We today have so many different distractions that are trying to keep us from hearing anything of what God would have for us. Is there any time that we take time to be alone with God? Being able to say, hey, you know what? Your voice is the most important part of my life. I need to be able to develop an ear to hear. And I know myself, I take time. Been doing this for years. I get into the Word of God every day. I get into devotionals. I take my time and give God an opportunity to speak to me. I'm always looking at people that are around me, trying to listen to them, because every once in a while I feel that God is speaking to me through someone else. And I don't want to be in a position where I do not hear and get a feel for what is really happening and what God is wanting inside of my life. Because my future and purpose is out there, and I need to have an ear to hear it. And your future, your purpose is out there. You need to have an ear to hear it, and you have to be listening. Life's most important question is, what on earth am I here for? Have you got that question answered? I myself believe that what I'm doing right now is what I've been called to do. I've been doing this because in life, I find that happiness only comes when you get yourself in a place where you can serve other people. And if you can get yourself into the place where you're serving and helping mankind and hearing direction from God, that's where the peace, the joy, everything takes place. And that's where it takes a good ear to hear all that. And this has been a question that's puzzled many and even billions. We focus on ourselves so much that we never get the answer. We focus on ourselves so much, we try to figure out our own plan for life. We try to figure out everything in life and try to get ourselves settled down, but we're not really listening and trying to find out what God might want. I know I love telling the story, I get a lot of ears listening to it, about the guy climbing the corporate ladder, finding success when he gets to the top rung of a ladder, and climbing up this, all to find out that when he gets to the top rung, that he had the ladder up against the wrong building. Had he been listening, someone would have told him which building to put that ladder up against. And that's where God, I believe, has a place for all of us. But we have to have ears to be able to hear that so we can climb and get ourselves in the right position in life. And this whole programming process we're talking about, this 2.16 here, You're Not Listening, is designed to say, this is important. The important things in life, many times, we do not do. And this message here, I don't know who's all listening to it, or if you have the ability to listen. Because sometimes I talk to people and I tell people there's all kinds of conversations going on inside your mind right now. And a lot of them probably have nothing to do with what I'm talking about. It could be the laundry, it could be the pizza, it could be the movie you're going to be going to, I don't know. But true listeners, people who have cultivated themselves to say, you know what, I need to take in everything that's coming my way, because you never know when God is trying to say something. And now is the time to make a conscious effort to be a good listener. Now is time for us to stop what we're doing, because we all exist for a purpose, and we best learn not only to be listeners to our fellow man, not only to be a listener in developing good relationships, but to be a good listener as far as God is concerned, understanding what His purpose is for you and your family and everyone in your life, because God is wanting great things for you. And that's where my prayer for you this week is God will open up your ears, will help you develop, just like my friend Larry with the Call in a While, develop an ear on a spiritual side to be able to hear, and develop the skills to be able to listen to other people, to be able to show that you really do care. And if you can develop these skills, you will have programmed something in your life that will give you the best of life from this point on. And I want to tell you that if this resonates with you, this message, please don't be afraid to share it with your friends, and don't be able to sign up and join us, because every week we have a new message. And I want to thank you for being with me. Stay blessed, stay blessed by the best, and have yourself a wonderful week. Thank you.